So, Kevin, we just came back from seeing
Vincere.
Vincere. So,
New Italian film. And the thing I was about to say, it's about Benito Mussolini. But it's not so much just about Benito Mussolini, is it? It's about his alleged first wife, or at least the film leads us to believe mother of his first son.
yeah, I mean, the alleged part is about his being a first wife. I think it's very clear that she was his lover. I think that is actually very clear.
And bore him a son.
And bore him a son. And so this movie goes about that. So, did you like the film, and what do you think the film is about?
Yeah, I thought the film was fantastic. It was unfortunately, I think it's under advertised. We hardly heard about it, and the stylization of the film is one very different than I think what we had anticipated going in. It is certainly not a dry historical docudrama about early to mid-century Italian, rise of fascism. It's stylistic. It's got a great soundtrack composed for the film. The editing keeps you guessing without confusing you to a frustrating degree, and the acting is fantastic. The story is very interesting, and the story, I think, really revolves around this woman named Ida Dalser, who is an actual historical character, who had claimed for years that she had been Benito Mussolini's wife, and that she was the mother of his firstborn child. Is there anything else we should read into that?
Well, I think it's a really multi-layered film, and in fact, we can talk about from hours if you want to, because there are so many different elements that are coming in. There metaphor of, for example, nationalism going on. There is this aspect of how you look at women's relationships, for example, to men. So here the movie really is, the protagonist is Mussolini, is Ida Dalser. I mean, she's the protagonist, and how she sees her relationship to Mussolini. But we also get a lot of insight on how Mussolini sees himself and how he sees the world around him. And in fact, there is this wonderful scene, I think, which sort of anchors the movie. And this is at the beginning of the film where they are making love, and the reaction between the two are very different, and it's a very passionate lovemaking, but
she's quite vocal and very much about, Benito, I love you, da-da-da. And he is silent, but his face says a lot.
It almost seems like he's looking into a mirror, looking at himself, and he's saying, okay, I know you love me because, of course, what else will you do? Of course, I expect you to love me. And yes, to a certain degree, it was one of those scenes where he's saying, of course I'm good. I mean, you don't have to tell me. Or at least, go ahead, tell me, but I know that I'm good. Actually, after this particular scene, he walks out naked. Actually, he goes into the lobby. And again, so you can see that as Emperor having no clothes even before becoming Mussolini, before windows are thrown open. And he envisions crowds of thousands in front of him. And we should mention actually that there is a very clever use of archival footage in the film, and so the way what he envisions is actually coming from the archival footage of actual Mussolini rallies. Well, there is so much more to talk about. Let's bring in two more things before we wrap up, and one is about the theme of religion that shows up in there. I mean, in many ways, the movie is framed by two scenes, one at the beginning and one at the end, and it is about a scene from 1914. I think it's around 1914 when that scene is, where
Yes.
Mussolini is dealing with a small group of people, and he is...
They're having some
much
political debate.
some theological debate, and they
Yeah.
bring this youngster up, and he says as if he's going to make a new statement, and he pretty much says that he challenges God, and he says, and he takes a pocket watch, and he says, well, this particular scene is before the credits, so it makes a very strong statement, and he challenges God, and he said, if God exists, then the God is going to strike him down within 5 minutes. And then everybody is in silent waiting what happens after 5 minutes. And nothing happens, and he says, there you go, God doesn't exist. And everybody is upset, and they're trying to get him at it, except Ida Delzer, who's in the audience, who is completely taken by this spectacle.
Yes. First of all, he's challenging certainly the existence of God, but more politically, he's challenging the function that the Vatican, the Church, plays in Italian society, and that comes up throughout the film. But then at a certain point in the film, he seems to, and I used the word before, compromise, but he seems to at least adjust, to put it kindly, his political views towards the Vatican, but essentially to better his own political situation.
His power. I mean, yeah. he would get anything for his power, and then at that time he gets the Vatican state, basically establish the Vatican state and get Vatican power behind him. Also, the Pope.
So he's very crafty. You know, he achieves some significant power and influence, but by what I think we could honestly agree is as compromising or at least shifting his initial values stated early in the film as being, you know, a man of the people, for the people, anti-church, anti-monarchy, anti-bourgeoisie.
It was an experience which I have not seen in many movies. It's a very unusual film in many ways because it is a historical film, but it is being... The first half an hour, 45 minutes, history is told at a breakneck pace, and with a combination of animations
and very stylistic. I mean, overall. And so, come on,
beautiful style.
Let's mention it.
Right. There's
Inglourious Basterds.
Inglourious Basterds.
Really, I mean,
sure.
I think there's a very significant similarity between the two.
Well, but except that it's a serious film, and it makes very serious comments. But there are animations in there. The other movie, as we were talking about, is reminded me of The Wall, for example, Pink Floyd's The Wall, where there are a lot of things embedded in there, and so would animation that would show up, and this movie does the same thing, very bizarrely. And I don't know why, but it also reminded me of surrealistic films like of Louis Buñuel, for example, because here is a case where there's a brilliant use of archival footage. For example, there is footage of women just...
There's a very long tracking shot at one point in the film of presumably, you know, Italian mothers breastfeeding their babies. But not only are their breasts gigantic, but the tracking shot goes on forever. It's just over the top. And so we are obviously meant to read quite a bit into this this insert into the film of this archival footage in terms of why is it here now? Well, about, you know, nurturing a new nation, keeping it vital, but also it reinforces something that's, you know, from the very start of the film with Ida Delzer and her devotion towards nurturing her son.
Actually, this movie is very well done. I think they were only in the middle, but I was thinking sort of like for a brief period of time that it was getting a little slow. There is a definite difference between the first half and the second half, but overall, I think this is a phenomenal film.
Who should
check
see
it out?
Who should see it?
Well, obviously there is lots and lots of nudity. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you are offended by that, that may be an issue.
That's true, but it's not gratuitous.
It's not. But if you're interested in history, if you are interested in films, because, and this is one thing we haven't had a chance to talk about, there is a lot of aspects of film within film. There are beautiful scenes, very deliberate scenes in which people are watching film in the movie.
In actual cinemas.
And they are watching actually the news story about, sort of like the news about the war, for example, and other things. So there is a lot of framing going on over there. So this movie, if you like art films, if you like history, if you like films about obsessive people, I think if you like power, this would be a good movie.
Curious about the birth of fascism, at least within the Italian context. I think just about everyone except maybe, you know, it's not for kids, certainly.
It's not for kids,
but I think people would enjoy this film.
All right, well, I'm really glad we saw this film.
Yeah. And it was so different than what we thought it would be. It really was.
Absolutely. Don't be turned off by just this Vincere. The name.
Vincere. But what does that mean?
Win.
Win.
That's about it.
And the film
wins.
I think the film does win.
Oh boy, that was terrible. Okay, all right.